With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoweh's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more. Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast series on transformation. SJ and I talking about the good God's been up to in our lives, what we've come to understand is a process of becoming, a process of freedom, a process of healing, and just about really how everything that we learn, you've got to give it some kind of description. What does it look like to develop into something? And we found this little process of awaken, deepen, and fulfill to be really profound and very helpful to walk with God and the good that He's up to in our lives. So, SJ, last week we just wrapped up with that 2 Corinthians 3, 17 and 18.
Yeah.
It says, "Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we all, who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory, are being transformed into His image with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit."
Right. So we talked about what's that look like for us, and Gary Barkalow has brought a lot of that to light in our lives, glory.
Yep.
And what glory means. Again, Michael, I love that ever-increasing part.
Yeah, me
That
too.
just implies a journey.
And more.
And it applies more. And it implies a process.
Mm-hmm.
And that in and of itself is a promise to me.
Yeah, and I think that's why Awaken, Deepen, and Fulfill work.
Yeah.
Because there's this process of ever-increasing glory. Things that are true about us becoming more true and more true. Learning how to wield power and authority. I think we're going to get to wrap this up in this episode. And as we talk about transformation, I got to read to you, though. I looked this up in the Message version.
Yeah.
Of 2 Corinthians 3.
Same verse.
Yeah. 2 Corinthians 3, 17, 18. "And when God is personally present, a living spirit, that old constricting legislation is recognized as obsolete. We're free of it, all of us. Nothing between us and God. Our faces shining with the brightness of His face. And so we are transfigured, much like the Messiah, our lives gradually becoming brighter and more beautiful as God enters our lives and we become like Him."
Bro, I love Eugene Peterson. I'm just saying.
Come on.
For those of you that don't know, Eugene Peterson wrote the Message version.
Yeah.
He got help along the way. I know he did. But he was the point man. And man, I love that.
Eugene Peterson. Look him up on YouTube.
Yeah, please
watch
do.
some of the stuff. Godspeed. We've mentioned that before. He's in the Godspeed video, not a cameo. So look up Godspeed on YouTube. Did we do a podcast on Godspeed? Certainly we did.
Earlier this year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That was 10 years ago.
I've been walking too quickly to remember, but I need to get back to Godspeed.
Okay, so because I want you to hear it again, and because SJ's got a great reader's voice, read the Message version of 2 Corinthians 3, 17 and 18.
Yeah.
So they can hear it one more time. It's just that good.
It is.
Come on.
"And when God is personally present, a living spirit, that old constricting legislation is recognized as obsolete. We're free of it, all of us. Nothing between us and God, our faces shining with the brightness of His face. And so we are transfigured, much like the Messiah, our lives gradually becoming brighter and more beautiful as God enters our lives and we become like Him." I'll tell you what, man, I'm putting that up on my mirror or in the bathroom or something.
Yeah, man.
I mean, I want to see that every morning.
Yeah, I printed out a couple fonts and put them on my forearm. My forearm's not quite big enough to pull that off as a tattoo. But I could do 2 Corinthians 3, 17 and 18 somewhere. Come on, man.
Yeah.
You were talking about last week. There's hope there. There's encouragement. And I would just say back to this process that we are advocating, healing, big word, to get healed from woundedness, the sins that people have done against you, or
that you've done against them.
or that you've done against them. But I think about our boyhood, girlhood, father wounds, mother wounds, sibling wounds. There's just so many things that we need healing from. Huge advocate for healing. And the process of healing is awaken, deepen, fulfill.
Yeah.
Finding something that's not working, the vows and the agreements that we made, SJ, and then it's not helpful. It's not working. It's not useful.
I think, Michael, as I read this Message translation, the line that stands out to me most prominently at the moment, maybe if I read it again tomorrow, a different one would stand out, but the line that's jumping off the page at me right now is nothing between us and God, our faces shining with the brightness of his face. What has been true in my life, and I would think I'm not the only one, is that the things that have happened to me, the wounds that I've received and the wounds that I've delivered, where I can go to with those before entering into this awaken, deepen, fulfill process is to a place of shame. And when I think about shame, I think about a face that's lowered. I think about broken eye contact. I think about almost a veil, right? That's over us, that's clouding our vision. It's clouding our ability not only to see, but to be seen. And when I read our faces shining with the brightness of his face, I see the way that my little boy, when he was 3 years old, would look at me and raise up his arms and say, pick me up, pick me up. That's what I see, that freedom.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great image. Ironically, you brought up being veiled. I mean, this is a passage Paul's teaching about Moses going up to the mountain and encountering that Shekinah glory and having a sunburn, having a face that has reflected.
He could have been wearing SPF 1000. It wouldn't have mattered.
And and he veils it, he kind of hides it. He doesn't want people to know. In the new covenant, this is talking about, no, the opposite.
Open.
Right? Let it shine. Let it be seen. Let it be experienced. And so, this awaken, deepen, fulfill, healing, very important. Training happens the same way. And when we talk about training, you have to talk about, God's part in growing us and training us up. SJ, in the new book, King Me, there's just a lot of this sentiment about validation and initiation. If you're going to be trained up in doing something, I think about sports, or I think about the military. I mean, you can be battered and yelled at and hammered and, diminished and stuff. And somebody can try to appeal to that, I'll show you, that kind of angry, I'll show you, or I'm quitting, I'm not doing this. Neither one of those programs is good. It's not good for your heart. But when you have somebody who's validating and initiating, celebrating your movement, your learning, you're getting it. I just don't know why we don't understand that that actually is a part of what God is going to do. Like, why would he not, in some way, shape, or form, be engaged in training us through validation and initiation so that he can entrust to us more?
Yeah.
That's what the scriptures talk about.
Yeah, I think it's varied and complicated as to why that might be true or hard to believe.
Yeah.
For some people, myself included at times.
It's usually because we don't see it. Now I'm back to Awaken. We were on a call the other night with a bunch of our friends, brothers from around the country who are kind of on this council that engages with Zoweh's vision, mission, and strategy. And so we're on the call, and one of the men is about to host a pretty significant gathering of Heart of a Warrior folks, people interested in Heart of a Warrior at his church. So there's going to be a couple hundred people involved in that. And he gets to step into a role of sharing part of his story, sharing the importance of that. That's deepening. I'm just going to tell you what category that's in. There was a time he awakened to this message a few years ago. He's been walking with us. He's been engaged with us. He's a good friend. And so in the deepening of the friendship and the deepening of the mission, he's taking a part. He's getting the ball. He's going to run with the ball that night. So do you remember what I said to the whole council?
Actually, I think it's tonight, the day we're recording. Isn't it tonight?
Yeah, maybe.
I think it's tonight.
It is tonight.
It's not the day this episode's airing, but it's the night
time
day
we're recording. That's right. So what I said was, though, I said, okay, time out, because I wanted them to see this. Time out, time out. I said on the call, Zoom call, bunch of faces and squares, right? I said, do you realize what this is? Let me ask you guys. Raise your hand when it comes to you. Have you prayed at all in the last 5 or 6 months, have any of you prayed that Zoweh's reach, that the message of the larger gospel would extend? Have any of you prayed that men would find this and this message would find men? Have any of you prayed this? Well, all the hands were up by then, right?
Oh, yeah.
Let me connect the dots. This thing that's going down in Colorado, why is it not answers to prayers that we have launched?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's nodding like you are right now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I guess it is.
It makes sense to me now.
Yeah.
It's just that part, SJ, we just don't see it. And some of it is because we don't look.
Right.
We're not looking for it. We're not awake. We're not aware. We're not paying attention. And whatever that looks like, I'm not trying to bring any condemnation to this. I'm saying there is a lot more God stuff going on, a lot more. And the more you start seeing it, the more you'll see. And the more you'll connect the dots, as our friend Jim says, about collecting the dots and then connecting the dots. You can't connect the dots till you collect them. And so that's a huge, huge, huge thing. So the gospel, you asked this earlier.
Yeah, that was last week. I asked you about the gospel, if it's not about forgiveness. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought some more about that. And the gospel being more about restoration. Not that forgiveness isn't on the table.
Right.
It's a huge part.
Yeah, I said that in that way. It was a provoking.
It was very wonderfully
way to
provoking.
Say it. Yeah.
And so we talked about the kind of Christians that produces. But yet this restoration thing is really, really something more to shoot for. I think if you shoot for forgiveness, you really don't get restoration. If you shoot at restoration, you get forgiveness.
Yeah, so something we've talked about, and I think I've said on the podcast before, either that or at the weekend, and I'm sharing this because I lived this way for a time. When it's all about forgiveness and only about forgiveness, you come to the cross and you stay there.
Yeah.
And you keep Jesus on the cross.
Yeah, that's the focal point, right?
That's not what Jesus did, right? Jesus went to the cross, and golly, I'm thankful, but he left the cross and left the grave and came back restored to his fullness and glory. And so if it's all about forgiveness, you're meeting him at the cross, and it's a great place to start.
Right.
But it's not a great place to stay.
Wow. Yeah, I know I've awakened to that and deepened in that and am experiencing fulfillment, but it's a great reminder. I hope that has done that, like somebody got awakened to the reality that, well, wait a minute. That's how awakened sounds sometimes. Like, wait a minute.
Hang on a second. I got a great story.
No, you don't have time. It's a long story. You
no, it isn't.
Blake's not.
No, I'm talking about me.
Okay, go.
I'm talking about me and a birthday. Well, you know what? Let's take a break.
Okay.
And I'll tell the story when we come back.
That I got to hear what's churning in your heart. This is good. We'll be right back on the Exploring More podcast.
Coming this fall, join the squadrons of men who are hungry and thirsty for more of God. It's Heart of a Warrior Encounter West, October 21st to 24th, 2021, at Young Life's Trail West Lodge in Buena Vista, Colorado. This weekend conference is designed to take a man into his deep heart and facilitate intimate encounters with God. To register, go to zoweh.org/events. Join your allies and discover the life of more.
Welcome back for story time with SJ.
Yeah.
We're waiting to hear. Tell us.
I think it was probably after we had moved to Durham, 2016. And we moved to Durham late in 2016, right around Thanksgiving. And those of you that know me know my birthday is shortly thereafter. It's on December 8th. And so like we do every year, the Zoweh team, the larger team, we gather for a Christmas party. Mm-hmm. So the Christmas party was a few days after my birthday. And we did a Secret Santa deal where you bring a present. Now you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
We bring a present. It's that whole deal of if you have a certain number, then it's your turn and you can steal a present or you can go get a new present or someone can steal yours, that whole deal. Well, we start opening up presents and there's one that's a fishing rod And then there's one that's
Did you get
fishing lures.
Well, we made it so you had the first
So
one.
I had the first one, yeah. So I opened it up, and maybe it was the fishing rod. I don't
tackle
remember.
box,
Or
something.
tackle box or something like that.
Oh,
But wait a
that's
minute,
good.
this one's about fishing. And then you get to mine, and I think mine and Sherry's was like a romantic evening in a box. So it was some firewood and some kindling and a movie gift certificate and all that stuff. So that one gets opened, and then the next one's fishing stuff, and the next one's fishing stuff, and there's all this fishing stuff, and I'm going, wait a minute, did Greg Sailors pick out all these presents? What is going on?
Wait a minute.
And then once, and I had that moment where I was like, hang on a second, and that's when you guys said, well, this is all for you, happy birthday, and you guys outfitted me with a bunch of fly fishing gear. So it was that awakening moment of that.
Yeah.
That's what it made me think of that story when you said, hang on a second, because I think that's what I said.
It is the great expression of awakening, right?
Yeah, it
it's
sure
like,
is.
wait a minute.
Yeah.
Whoa, hold on. You know, and you're caught up in a new reality. And I get it now. Let me say it this way. I see it now. That's what we're after. So if this is true and the process of transformation is awaken, deepen, fulfill, you know, really one of the things that I think us as characters in a much larger story, as 2 Corinthians invites us to believe that we are more. We are more. I think that's another hindrance a little bit with the cross. It kind of focuses on your sin and the less.
Yeah. Behavior.
Versus the ever-increasing glory, which is the invitation to the more. I love the stories, SJ, when the superhero doesn't know they're a superhero yet.
Right.
And they find out they have superpowers. It's like, wait a minute. I can do this.
Right.
I can do that.
Right.
And I think that's how the disciples were in Luke 10, when Jesus is giving them this ministry, this mission, and he's equipping them to do it. And he's giving them literally power and authority because he sends them out, right, in twos. Luke 10:19, he says, I've given you authority, right, to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. He's talking about demons.
Yeah.
And they won't harm you. Before that is when he says, I saw Satan fall like lightning. Before that, he's saying, this is going to work.
Trust me.
This is going to work. I'm going to share my power and authority with you. You're going to be superheroes. You're going to have a place in Infinity Wars. You're going to be an Avenger. You know, I want to see I can't wait till it comes out. I don't know if it'll be 5 years from now. I want to see the Chosen episode when this is happening.
Yeah, it would be cool.
And they're like, wait a minute.
Hang on a second.
Because they come back and they tell Jesus, you're not going to believe what happened.
Yeah. You brought up Avengers, and I think it's in Civil War when Ant-Man is
joins them.
Kind of brought into the and even if he's meeting Captain America, and he's like Mr. America or something like that. He's just Mr. Captain, or he's just all wound up
flustered,
and flustered, and he's like, you know, thanks for thanking of me, you know,
getting everything turned around.
Oh my gosh, he's just so excited to be there, you know, and I just imagine, you know, the disciples to some degree were like that too.
Yeah, and you see it again. We brought up the Chosen before. It's just really a helpful image.
Yeah.
You know, as Jesus becomes more popular, there's a few more disciples that kind of drop in that become part of the band. Yeah, man, they don't really quite know who he is yet. They think they do. They definitely don't know what he's doing to them. And this thing's going to progress.
Bro, aren't you glad that we're not like that?
Yeah, right. That's a great, you just stole one of my, I love that.
I did. Michael brings up a verse. I can't even remember which one it is right now.
Ephesians 5.
It is Ephesians 5. You're right. And he's like, aren't you glad that's over, that we're not dealing with that anymore?
With warfare.
That's right. But I mean, as you talk about the disciples, you know, they don't know who they are. They don't know who he really is.
Yeah.
And the power that they have and authority that they have and the transformation that he can bring. Aren't you glad it was just those guys and not us?
Oh, man.
Oh, come on, man.
Yeah, you know? well played. That was good. But I think we miss a lot when we try to boil the categories down into forgiveness, let's say, and not add the others. Forgiveness stays on the board. It stays on the table, but power and authority, having the ability to love people and encourage, training in all of that. It's going to be hard to do that like Jesus did if you feel unworthy or if you feel like It's
There's still strings
like
attached.
you said earlier, shame.
Yeah, yeah.
When there's elements of shame still in our story.
Right.
That's why healing in the Awaken, Deepen, Fulfill process is so important.
Yeah.
I love the idea of ever-increasing glory. What does that look like? I mean, we're tossing around the idea of being superheroes, being on the council, being chosen, being invited to the game, to the battle, to the team.
It's a needed reminder, Michael, because we talk about being on the journey and we talk about Awaken, Deepen, Fulfill, and more love, more life, more freedom. That's what it is. That's what ever-increasing glory really is that being on that journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to wrap up with a couple passages from Romans 8, SJ, about how cool this all has been afforded us, how wildly generous and amazing God has arranged for this. And it's just like, you don't want to leave a lot of Amazon gifts on your porch. That's kind of silly. I don't want to leave a lot of kingdom gifts and kingdom invitations and kingdom training modules on the porch.
I don't want to leave presents under the tree.
No.
No. Yeah.
Even when they're all for you.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
So,
especially when they're all for me.
Yeah. So I came across this Romans 8 several years ago, and it has not left me. It has gotten deeper and deeper and still is on that border of deepen and fulfill because I'm still in this process. But I just want to share this from Romans 8, one of my favorite chapters in the scriptures. Here's the highlight. He becomes like us so that we can become like him. That's what Romans 8's about. He became like us, sinful man, so that we can become like him, glorious ones. So I want to tell you that now. Now let me read this from the Message. Let's go back to Peterson's Message. Romans 8, 3 and 4 says, God went for the jugular when he sent his own son. He didn't deal with the problem as something remote and unimportant. In his son, Jesus, he personally took on the human condition, entered the disordered mess of struggling humanity in order to set it right once and for all. The law code, weakened as it always was by fractured human nature, could never have done that. That is wonderful. He personally took on the human condition, entered this disordered mess in order to set it right once and for all.
Yeah, interesting what came to mind with that particular line for me, in order to set it right once and for all. If you don't treat a broken bone correctly,
right,
it has to be re-broken and set right. I know in my own life, there's some ways that I've tried to bring healing to hurting places in my heart that were really not the way to go about that healing, that really weren't healing. Even though I could function, if I broke my arm and it wasn't set right, I could probably function. But what Jesus wants to do is to set it right once and for all. Like, let's really deal with this.
So he literally takes our place. He becomes sinful man. He takes on the sins of the world in order to make this other life possible.
Right.
You got that
and
one?
Available.
Can you read the back half? This is Romans
29:30.
29:30 in the Message,
Yeah, God knew what he was doing from the very beginning. He decided from the outset to shape the lives of those who love him along the same lines as the life of his capital S Son. The Son stands first in the line of humanity he restored. We see the original and intended shape of our lives there in him. After God made that decision of what his children should be like, he followed it up by calling people by name. After he called them by name, he set them on a solid basis with himself. And then, after getting them established, he stayed with them to the end, gloriously completing what he had begun. Wow.
Dude, if that's not awaken, deepen, and fulfill.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
It's all over that.
If I've read it before, I didn't hear it.
You didn't awaken to it? Yeah,
go. The Son stands first in the line of humanity he restored.
Yeah.
So that's the restoration that's available, listeners. And Jesus was the first in line, was the first in line.
Will be.
Yeah. He's the first in line. So the implication is it doesn't end with him. It starts with him.
We see the original and intended shape of our lives there in him.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
After getting them established, he stayed with them to the end, gloriously completing, fulfilling, might I say, what he had begun. We're not making this up. I'm just saying it's that good and it's available. And we're hopeful that this podcast series has been provoking, maybe disrupting, but inviting you to that.
And I know what's true for me, Michael, and maybe it is for you too. The process of awaken, deepen, fulfill, leading to restoration is more true for me at the end of this podcast series than it was at the beginning.
Yeah, I agree.
And I hope that's true for some of you listeners out there. Yeah.
Yeah, and it invites us to see it and I think engage in it. So, hey, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a part of the Exploring More podcast little nation that it's becoming. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Love to meet you, men. Join us at the Heart of a Warrior Encounter out west. I know we're all kind of watching the variables of masks and vaccinations and all that stuff, but right now we're on. We're on for
as of right now,
October.
We're
go to the Zoweh.org website, look up the men's events, this encounter weekend. It's limited. It's filling up already, about 175 seats, beds. And so we'd love for you to be with us and look forward to exploring more with you in the weeks ahead. We've got some great topics coming up, and we'll unpack those soon.
Yeah, questions, comments, and even stories from your journey of awaken, deepen, and fulfill. We'd love to hear those stories, listeners. Email us at exploringmore@zoweh.org. And as always, if you would leave us a rate and review on your podcast platform of choice, we'd appreciate it. Helps us get found, helps the message get out there. Thanks again for listening.
Yeah, thanks again. Hey, stay on that path. Awaken, deepen, fulfill. The path of transformation, becoming more and more like Him. We'll see you next time on the Exploring More podcast. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoweh.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the life of more by visiting Zoweh on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoweh on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.